A New Beginning. Chapter 1. The Bus Ride West. The bus rumbled across the Kansas plains, its tires humming a lullaby that almost lulled Emma to sleep. She pressed her forehead against the cool window and watched the wheat fields blur into gold. With each mile, she felt the past slip a little further behind her. Her ticket said Denver, but she wasn't sure she'd stay there long. All she knew was she needed to go somewhere, anywhere, that wasn't Ohio. In her lap, she held a worn leather purse. Inside were her last $200, her driver's license, and a folded note she had written to herself the night she left. "You are allowed to start over. You are allowed to be happy." She read those words again now, letting them sink in. The life she'd left had grown so small. 4 walls she never felt safe in, a job that drained her spirit, and a relationship that had slowly taught her to shrink. She was tired of shrinking, tired of apologizing for wanting something different. The bus crossed into Colorado just before sunset. Mountains rose in the distance, dark and solemn against the pink sky. Emma swallowed the tightness in her throat. She felt terrified and brave all at once. This was her new beginning. Whatever happened next, it was hers to choose. Chapter 2. Arrival. Denver's Greyhound station smelled like stale coffee and bleach. Emma stepped off the bus with her backpack over one shoulder and looked around. The city felt enormous. Glass towers gleaming in the afternoon light, strangers hurrying past with purpose. She found a bench near the entrance and sat down, trying to steady her breathing. She'd booked a room at a budget motel a mile away. She could walk there, but her legs felt weak. A man selling newspapers shuffled by, calling out headlines. She shook her head when he offered her one, but he smiled kindly anyway. It struck her then how invisible she was here. In Ohio, everyone knew everyone's business. Here, no one knew her name. No one knew what she'd left behind. The anonymity felt like freedom. When she finally stood, she felt stronger. She tightened the straps of her backpack and stepped into the flow of people on the sidewalk. Chapter 3, Room 107. The motel was a squat, L-shaped building painted a dull mustard yellow. The clerk behind the counter barely looked up as Emma checked in. She handed him her ID and a credit card, and he slid a key across the counter. "Room 107, he said. "Checkouts at 11. The room smelled faintly of cigarettes, even though the sign on the door said non-smoking. A single bed with a faded floral bedspread took up most of the space. There was a desk scarred with cigarette burns and a little bathroom with a cracked mirror. Emma set her bag on the bed and sank into the mattress. The quiet was deafening. She could hear her heart thumping in her chest, reminding her she was still here, still alive. She pulled out her note again. "You are allowed to start over. You are allowed to be happy." She taped it to the lamp by the bed so she'd see it when she woke up. Chapter 4. First Steps. The next morning, Emma woke before dawn. She splashed water on her face and stared at her reflection. Dark circles under her eyes, hair escaping its braid, a small scar by her temple from the last fight she'd ever have in Ohio. She took a deep breath. New beginning, she reminded herself. At a diner down the block, she ordered black coffee and a plate of scrambled eggs. She pulled out her phone and began searching for work. She applied for jobs she never would have considered before. Dishwasher, cashier, hotel housekeeper. Every time she clicked Submit Application, she felt her fear ease just a little. A man a few stools away glanced over and offered her a sympathetic smile. "Just get into town?" he asked. "Yeah," she said, her voice small. He nodded. "Takes guts." She blinked back sudden tears. Maybe it did. Chapter 5. The Interview. 3 days later, she got an email from a downtown hotel inviting her to interview for a housekeeping position. She borrowed the iron at the motel's front desk and pressed her one good blouse. On the bus ride downtown, she gripped her resume so tightly it crumpled. She'd never worked in hospitality before, but she knew how to clean. She knew how to show up on time. She knew how to learn. The HR manager, a woman named Celia, was brisk but not unkind. She asked about Emma's experience, whether she could work weekends, if she could lift 50 pounds. Emma answered every question honestly. She didn't try to make herself sound more impressive than she was. When the interview ended, Celia said she'd call within a few days. As Emma stepped back onto the sidewalk, she felt an unexpected flutter in her chest. Hope. Chapter 6. The Call. That evening, Emma sat on the edge of her motel bed with her phone in her hand, willing it to ring. Every time the screen lit up, her heart jolted. At 7:12 p.m., the call came. "This is Celia from the Sherwood Hotel," the voice said. "We'd like to offer you the position." Emma pressed her palm to her mouth. "Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. You'll start Monday. Come to HR at 8 a.m. When she hung up, she stared at the ceiling. She felt a dizzy combination of relief and terror. This was real. She had a job. She had a way to stay. She whispered it out loud just to hear it. "I'm not going back." Chapter 7. First Day. Monday dawned gray and cold. Emma put on her new uniform, navy blue scrubs, and walked downtown. The sidewalks bustled with commuters. For the first time since she'd arrived, she didn't feel like she was just passing through. The housekeeping supervisor, a tall woman named Alma, showed her around. Emma learned how to strip beds, replace linens, restock toiletries, and check minibars. The work was exhausting but straightforward. Every completed room felt like a small victory. At lunch, she sat in the break room with a plastic container of pasta. A woman with a warm laugh introduced herself as Maria. She had worked there 6 years. "You new here?" Maria asked. "Yeah," Emma said. "Just moved." Maria smiled. "Takes courage." Emma felt her throat tighten. That was the second time someone had said that to her. Maybe they were right. Chapter 8. The Library. On her day off, Emma found the downtown library. She signed up for a card and spent hours wandering the aisles. She hadn't read much in the past year. Most days had been about surviving, getting through work, avoiding fights, trying to keep her hope alive. Here, she let herself sink into stories again. She checked out 3 novels and a book about starting over after trauma. That night, she lay on her motel bed, reading until her eyes closed. Chapter 9. A Place to Call Home. Emma worked at the hotel for 4 weeks before she saved enough to move out of the motel. It wasn't much, a studio apartment in an old brick building on Colfax Avenue. But when she picked up the keys from the leasing office, she felt something like triumph. The walls were pale yellow, and the kitchen was barely big enough to turn around in. But it was hers. No one else had a key. No one could show up uninvited. No one could tell her she didn't belong. Her first night there, she unpacked her clothes into the single dresser and taped her note. "You are allowed to start over. You are allowed to be happy," to the bathroom mirror. She slept on a borrowed air mattress with her arm under her head, feeling the quiet settle around her. It was the best sleep she'd had in years. Chapter 10. Building Routines. Life fell into a rhythm. Each morning, Emma woke early, drank instant coffee by the window, and walked to the hotel. She liked the walk, the way the city slowly came alive. the smell of bread baking in the cafe across from her building. At work, she learned which guests tipped and which didn't, which rooms were easiest to clean, how to pace herself so her back didn't ache by lunchtime. Alma was patient, but expected her to work hard, and Emma respected that. After her shifts, she often stopped by the library or the little thrift store down the block, looking for second-hand kitchen supplies. On weekends, she explored new neighborhoods on foot. It wasn't glamorous, but it was safe, predictable. For the first time in her adult life, she felt like she could breathe. Chapter 11. The Call from Home. One evening, as she was rinsing dishes in her tiny sink, her phone buzzed. "Mom," the screen read. She hadn't spoken to her mother in over 2 months. Her hands trembled as she dried them and picked up. "Hi, Mom." "Emma." Her mother's voice sounded small. I wanted to see if you're okay." Emma closed her eyes. I'm safe." There was a long pause. "I was so worried when you left." "I know," Emma whispered, "but I couldn't stay." Her mother exhaled shakily. Are you happy?" The question surprised her. She glanced around her little kitchen, at the chipped counter and the note on the mirror, at the borrowed saucepan and the single plate she'd bought for 50 cents. "I'm getting there," she said finally. "That's good," her mother said, voice breaking. "That's all I wanted." They said goodbye softly. Emma set the phone down and leaned against the counter, her chest tight with something she didn't have a name for. Sadness, relief, maybe even hope. Chapter 12. A New Friendship. In late spring, Maria invited Emma to have coffee after work. They walked to a diner on the corner and slid into a vinyl booth. Over steaming mugs, Maria talked about her teenage daughter, about her dream of opening her own cleaning business. Emma found herself opening up too, about her life in Ohio, the reasons she'd left, the fear that still woke her up some nights. Maria reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You're braver than you think." Emma's throat closed. "Thank you." After that, they started meeting every week. Some nights, Maria would bring leftover empanadas or fresh rolls from her kitchen. For the first time, Emma felt like she had a friend. Chapter 13. Summer in the City. As summer arrived, the city transformed. The sidewalks filled with musicians and food carts. The days stretched long and bright. Emma started walking home a longer way, just to feel the warmth on her face. She bought a little potted basil plant for her windowsill and a thrift store fan that clattered like an old train but kept her cool. One evening, she wandered into a free concert in Civic Center Park. She sat on the grass, watching a folk band play under strings of lights. The music wrapped around her like a promise. "This is my life now," she thought. "This is my beginning." Chapter 14. Facing Fear. Sometimes the fear still came back. One morning in August, she woke to a pounding on the door and her heart seized. For a split second, she thought she was back in her old life, that he'd found her, that everything she'd built was about to crumble. But it was just the maintenance man, coming to fix the leaky faucet she'd reported. When he left, she sat on the floor, shaking. It takes time, she reminded herself. Healing takes time. She pulled out her notebook and wrote, "I am safe. I am here. He can't touch me anymore." She repeated it until her breathing slowed. Chapter 15. Progress. By fall, Emma had saved enough to buy a real mattress. The delivery guys carried it up the stairs and left it leaning against the wall. She managed to wrestle it onto the bed frame herself, laughing when it nearly knocked her over. That night, she lay on it, feeling the unfamiliar softness cradle her. She thought of all the nights she'd spent wondering if she'd ever have this, a place she could rest without fear. She turned her face into the pillow and let herself cry, not because she was sad, but because she finally felt safe enough to. Chapter 16. A letter in October. She received a letter with no return address. The handwriting was familiar, slanted, hurried. Her chest went cold. She sat at the kitchen table and opened it carefully. "Emma," it began, "I don't know where you are exactly, but I hope you're okay. I'm sorry for everything. I wish things were different." She read it twice, then she folded it and slid it into the back of her drawer. Her hands were steady when she did. Chapter 17. Small Joys. November brought the first snow. Emma watched flakes drift past her window and felt a surprising thrill. In Ohio, snow had meant long nights trapped indoors. Here, it felt clean, like a fresh start. She bought a cheap kettle and started drinking herbal tea every evening. She found a used copy of The Bell Jar at the thrift store and read it in 2 days. She called her mother every other week, and the conversations grew easier. One afternoon, Maria invited her to Thanksgiving dinner. Emma almost declined out of habit. She'd spent so long believing she didn't belong anywhere. But then she heard her own voice say, "I'd love that." Chapter 18. Thanksgiving. Maria's apartment was warm and bright. The table was crowded with dishes: turkey, potatoes, tamales. Maria's teenage daughter, Elena, hugged Emma like they'd known each other for years. When they sat down to eat, Maria asked everyone to say something they were thankful for. When it was Emma's turn, she hesitated. Then she looked around the table at these people who had welcomed her without questions. "I'm thankful," she said, voice trembling, "for second chances." Maria reached for her hand and squeezed it. Chapter 19. The first year ends. On New Year's Eve, Emma stood by her window, watching fireworks bloom over the city skyline. A year ago, she'd been sitting on a bus with nothing but a backpack and a heart full of fear. Now, she had a job, a home, and a handful of people who cared about her. She was still healing, but she was no longer running. She whispered it out loud, just to feel it in her mouth. "I'm okay." The words felt true. Chapter 20. A New Beginning. The first morning of January. Emma woke to sunlight spilling across her new mattress. She made tea and sat by the window, her basil plant stretching toward the light. She pulled her notebook into her lap and wrote, "This is my new beginning. I am not who I was. I am stronger. I am free." She closed the notebook, feeling something like peace. Whatever the future held, she knew she could face it, because she had already survived the hardest part, choosing to begin again.